Good morning, Tammy. We're happy to be here. One Tuesday more, like one more Tuesday.
I
Excited
know
for the
it's already
conversation.
February, it just has gone by so fast. And we're excited to have our next guest, Nneka Edwards, here. Hi, Nneka. But before
Hola,
we
hola,
get started,
hello.
we just want to say hi to everyone here who's watching. We want to thank you so much for your support, for posting, just for all that you do. And if you haven't checked out our website, be sure to go to unlockingfreedominnature.com, where you're going to see courses, articles, connections, adventures, retreats. We have so many things to offer. And then if you want to rewatch, of course, we have a page where you can go and click on the person's pictures and stuff, but we have YouTube videos. We're on all social media sites. So we just want to say thank you so much for being here. And I want to say hi to my partner, Lori.
I am
Lori,
happy to be here. I want to say hello to Nika too, and also Eva. She's here with us. And anyone
awesome,
else that's
Eva.
going to join us or will watch this recorded, we say hello to you. We love our community. We are not going to go anywhere. Many people are not doing Facebook Lives anymore because of technology and complications, etc. We are sticking it. Tammy is an amazing person that has a lot of grit and a lot of desire to make things work. So she's done the homework and she's the one that gets us here live for you because we love the recording sessions. It's great. At the same time, we don't want to lose or miss out on the live interactions. And like right now, we can say hi to Eva live. So join us and ask because at the moment if you're watching us live, you can ask our guests specific questions and have a conversation with us as if you were in here with us. So now I would like to say hello to Nika again and tell us what you are about and what got you where you are right now.
Yeah, we want to hear where you're from and your journey. I mean, you have so many things to offer. So we just want to hear your whole story, to where
Okay,
you got to where you're at, and we'll ask you questions in between. So,
sure. Well, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. We are the southernmost island. We are the island at the I don't know. I don't think I can say tippy top. So I don't know what you say for maybe the bitty bottom of the island chain. We're right next to Venezuela, but our first language is English. And by the way, I was born in Canada, so I have dual citizenship. I'm Canadian, but I'm also Trinidadian.
so what
But
part
I
of
can
Canada?
Ontario, Toronto.
Okay.
No, Hamilton. Hamilton was where I was born. Yeah,
Okay.
and came to Trinidad when I was 3. And but I consider myself a lady of the West, but I also consider myself a lady of the East. I spent some time in the Far East, and I have those streams running through me very strongly, both Caribbean color and um, Eastern aesthetics. And also, in terms of what I do, I think the easiest way to summarize what I and encapsulate what I do would to be say that I'm a teacher. But then you know that teachers are everything.
Mhm.
They are doctor, they are counselor, they are, the same things that I think you were saying in the video that you did on mom shaming, that moms do everything. Teachers are like moms or dads, we do everything.
Yeah.
So I wear many different hats. A teacher, and I'm especially interested in critical thinking. But critical thinking is a huge umbrella that covers many other things like emotional intelligence, analytical thinking, communication, many different things. I'm also a poet. I'm an author. I have written, I meant to do a tally before I came on this interview, but this day kind of ran away with me in a way that I didn't anticipate. I wasn't able to do that, but over 100 books, so maybe somewhere around 105 now. And I self-publish, and also I am an artist. My
I know.
media,
Well, that's how I met Nneka, was through a mutual connection called Engage Your
right?
Heart.
Yes, on Engage
And so we
Heart.
did a
Yeah.
study thing together, and that's how I met her. So tell us how you got from your being three over there, how you kind of got started into what you're doing now, or got into your art or your
Oh,
poetry
it's
writing.
I mean, it's one of those things that seems random, but then when you look back, you say, okay, it wasn't random. I spent 1 year in Japan between 2006 and 2007. By the way, if I speak too quickly, please let me know. Trinidadians speak very quickly. But yes, between 2006 and 2007, I was in Japan. Japan is a very artistic place. I think the Far East in general is very artistic. And during that time, I rediscovered an interest in and a love for painting, especially watercolor painting. But at that point, the thought of self-publishing was not something on my radar. However, when I came back to Trinidad in 2007, one thing led to another, and I found myself in a place where I was actually starting to write books. This was under the supervision of a church that I belonged to at the time. They introduced me to the world of publishing, and that's how I got started. But to be honest, at that point, I was just told, right, just write. You just write. I didn't understand that I was starting a business and that, authoring was a whole big world. They were just telling me, you write, just keep writing. And then eventually I parted ways with that church, but I continued the journey because by that point I felt that, it was part of my calling. And so that's really how I got started on writing. In terms of art, I started. Japan rekindled my interest in painting and art in general. Um, uh, for example, when I was in Japan, one day I decided to take a stroll in my neighborhood. I'm usually a homebody. I'm a homebody. I'm perfectly happy by myself at home. I decided to, just take a stroll in my neighborhood, and I happened to find a little teeny museum. I mean, nothing big. And I didn't even go into the museum. I meant to go into the museum, but I got sidetracked by a little vending area at the entrance. And among the things that they were selling, they had these mini postcard size watercolor pads and a mini set of watercolor paint. I don't know what told me to buy these things, or as we say in Trinidad, I don't know what possessed me, but I decided to pick up. I decided to pick up the paint and
I can
watercolor
actually see why. So
Yeah.
pad. Yeah. So went back to my apartment, started painting, and then by the time I got back to Trinidad and started exploring the world of being an author, one of the key people in the church group that was encouraging me to write also said, you should illustrate your own books. And I told him, I told him, you're absolutely crazy. There's no way I can do that. And well, you know, the rest, what can I say? The rest is history, because I ended up doing exactly that. And I just got better and better. And now, initially, I did experience imposter syndrome. I didn't like telling people that I was an artist, because I didn't think I had the right to say that. But now I say it happily and confidently.
So
what
what
kind
is
of
it?
books?
Yeah, what kind of books and all of them? Did you say 105?
I think it's at 100. It's crossed 100. I know it's over 100. So I'd say it's probably 104, 105, somewhere around there.
Imagine our lives living like, yeah, I think I have like 100 published books out there. I don't know the number. My artistic and illustrator life is just so wonderful. Well, congratulations. That's a big
Yeah,
accomplishment.
congratulations. I mean, some people, I'm lucky, both of us have done one book, and we're
Hmm.
like, yay, we did that. And I'm just trying to put mine on audio and have not got it done. And,
Okay.
it's just, I know excuse after excuse of why, because something always happens, right? But
Mm.
I can't believe you've done over 100 books like that. So tell us a little bit of what are these stories about?
Is it
Children's,
poetry or
adults,
yeah?
Bible, what are they?
Poetry mainly, but I also have some books with prose or poetic prose, um, and a couple coloring books, and some language-based poetry, maybe one or two language-based poetry books, one in Spanish and one multilingual for all ages. Some books are great for kids, some for teens, some for teens and adults, some adult content. So, I mean, my range is pretty broad, and I cover themes like the Bible, retelling Bible stories, sometimes in okay, well, as I mentioned, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. We speak two forms of English in Trinidad. We speak Standard English, and we also speak English Creole, which we call dialect or Trini dialect, Trini talk. So, for example, now for somebody who speaks English, who's a native English speaker, who speaks English really well, if you come to Trinidad and you happen to eavesdrop on a conversation between a group of Trinis or two Trinis speaking in Trini talk, you might be a little lost. It sounds a lot like English, but we have our own vocabulary. So some of the books, some of the poetry that I've written, even for the Bible content, is in English Creole. And so I write in both standard English, English Creole. I cover the Bible, culture, music, dance, um, critical thinking. I recently, just yesterday, was it yesterday? Yes, yesterday, one of my books was published. It's on critical thinking, but it's based on nursery rhymes. I have a critical thinking book that's based on children's stories like Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, because it was only in my, at this stage of my life, in my late 40s, heading into my 50s, that I realized that those children's stories were actually uh, fact masquerading as fiction. So those are some of the things that I explore in my work, and then some.
So this is the thing that really gets me excited about your story and your confidence and getting yourself out there after even going through an imposter syndrome season, if I may say that,
Yeah,
which all of us go through, or I can admit I've gone through that. Like, who am I to do this? What credibility do I have? Or I am not this and that and that and that, or I'm too this and that and that and that to be able to do this. And look at
right,
you. I like that confidence. I like that that you were brave and stepped into that greatness and found that your call or calling to do that, especially delivering it in the language that's dear to your heart and that some people will enjoy it.
right.
So
Thank you.
what is your advice out there for people that are they're having the cold feet and they're having the paralysis of the analysis, like I call it, and they're not very sure if they're being they're having those imposter syndrome control them or take over, living their
Right,
life to the fullest and taking those risks and just getting themselves out there and showing up.
right. Yeah, I think first of all, I would tell people you don't have to feel that you have to start off as an expert. You start off where you're at, and you gradually build up. And what will give someone the confidence is when you become skillful at what you do, and that takes practice. And so, for example, if somebody would like to be an author and they'd like to write a book, then I would say make sure that you can write, because a lot of people think that if you speak English and English is your native tongue, that's all you need. You know, I mean, Amazon is flooded right now with tons of published
Authors.
material, right?
Where
But
can people find your books actually? In Amazon, or is that where you
yes,
self-publish? Okay.
on Amazon. And so that would be my advice to somebody who thinks they have imposter syndrome. First of all, first of all, make sure that you are where you're supposed to be. We all have a special fit. Make sure that you're not trying to be somebody else. Just be who, what you know is true to you, and everything will flow from that. But then after that, just make sure that you build up the skill that you need to be a credible whatever you are, whether it's a therapist or nurse or teacher, whatever you may be. Build up the skill, because that is the thing that will neutralize imposter syndrome.
One
What
of the
what
things when you're talking about this was a quote that I came up in my memories today that our church had put out was, And I always think about this because I always tell people this: comparison is an act of violence against the self. And a lot of times, it's not always us that's comparing ourselves that causes that imposter syndrome, but it's when somebody goes and starts comparing us to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you should be this, you like, look at what this other, oh, I get it. I've gotten it. It's like, why aren't you doing what this other artist does? Why don't you do what this artist does or this, always comparing. Well, maybe you should be doing this or maybe you should be doing that. Well, that steals your identity. You're trying your own style. If you're trying to, it's one thing to go and study a person that you admire and just to kind of feel like, what do they do? Like I once copied Julie Kramer Cole. She's this artist, kind of like Bev Doolittle, that hides horses and different things in her trees and her rocks, right? Just to see
Right,
how it was done. But it's amazing, it wasn't to become that person. It was just to find my own style and what I
right.
liked.
Mhm.
And so when we start comparing ourselves to everybody else or letting others compare us to everybody else, I think that's when we start thinking we're not good enough. And you get that imposter syndrome. Am I correct? Am I the only one who thinks this way? Or how do you feel?
Absolutely, that's very true. And right now it's winter for you guys where you are in the world in the temperate
Yeah,
north.
snow here at my house. Not at Lori's. She's 84 today.
Lucky
Yesterday, but
Lori.
yeah.
I'm
But
like 20 degrees today, so it is cold here.
you know, where you are, it's snowing. And you know what amazes me about winter? One of the things that amazes me, apart from those gorgeous, images that you shared with me of the, the crystals on the foliage, was on the leaves and so on, was that every snowflake is unique. You don't have two cloned snowflakes. And as people, we're like that. You look at the bird, like for example, where I live, we have birds play in the garden all day. I've never seen any two birds of two different species fighting to be one another. They're just happy to be who they are. And I think that as people, we should be more like that, and just know that there's a pair of shoes, a real funky pair of shoes, that can only fit you the way those glass shoes fit Cinderella, you know? And so once we get comfortable with that, I think that we would stop comparing. Also, for me, I think that one of the things that helps me not compare myself to other people, apart from the fact that I'm just very comfortable in my own skin, is that um, I have. Let's put it like this: my template for how I think about myself comes from my friendship with God. So if He doesn't tell me something about myself that somebody else is trying to shove down my throat, then what they're telling me is really fit for the garbage bin, right? So I don't,
Yes.
if God hasn't said it and what you're telling me is making me feel bad about myself, then I don't really need to be trying to process that.
Or God's already told me I'm this, I'm capable, I'm enough, and I'm gonna stick to that, right? So
Exactly.
that's wonderful. But sometimes I know many people, Nneka, that are their worst enemies themselves. Yes, for those voices that are outside of their head, but also because they accept those opinions or second guesses from other people, and then they believe it enough that they start talking to themselves like that.
Right.
And I just love that. So I love the illustration. So I'm checking you out here in Amazon, and I already
Awesome.
saw some things beautiful. So is it computer generated, or is it pen and pencil marker? What is the medium?
Um, well, I draw, I paint, and I collage. I
Mm,
suspect you're looking at the paper collage ones and wondering how I did that. I'm not too sure which ones you
okay.
were looking at,
The
but
Noah's Ark, the Noah's Ark.
no. Oh, Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
Ah, that is water. That is black gel pen to create black and white outline images. I then color the lines, only the lines. I don't fill in spaces, but I color the lines with colored pencils. I scan it. So I do my work by hand. I don't have any fancy software. That's the other thing for what I do. I don't have a lot of fancy, expensive anything. So what I have a lot of problem solving to do. I
Hey,
use
that's the best way to do art.
Being resourceful.
exactly. I use simple tools and create beautiful work. But what I did was it was gel pen to create something that looks like coloring pages. Then I outline those lines with colored pencils, and then I add a special effect so that you get this lovely, almost kind of three-dimensional or kind of glass type effect.
So, and those
Amazing,
kind of
amazing.
projects are fun for those that, if like you said, when you teach, like when I've taught some art lessons and stuff, where you can do like ink with pastel over or colored pencils or watercolor. You mix your mediums to create these fun things, especially with younger kids and stuff. And
Mm,
the drawings come out amazing. So,
yes.
and it's fun and it's creative. But I've had some very talented kids in my classes. So,
Nice. Nice.
but yeah, I picture every single thing you tell me, Nneka. So I'm very, very visual.
Oh,
So I
okay.
can picture you drawing all that out for Noah's Ark. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and also, you know what helps me? I would say I'd love to bring this into the conversation. What helps me as an artist is having taught Chinese. So when I did my undergrad, my major was, you could say, Chinese studies. It was called East Asian studies, but my focus was China. And I've spent quite a few years cumulatively together, all together, but not all at the same time necessarily, not consecutively, not in continuous sequence, teaching Chinese. And that means I teach people how to write Chinese as well. And Chinese is so beautiful, it's so artistic. And you can find all, I think, most, if not all, of the what are called the maybe not the elements of art, but the principles of the design within Chinese writing, within Chinese script. And so without even realizing it, by teaching Chinese, I was developing my artistic skill, especially as when it comes to drawing.
But you
So
said you're a teacher. You love that, huh?
yes, I do. Absolutely.
So you were teaching language here, and then do you also teach art then?
I have taught art. I used to teach a kindergarten, a little kindergarten in my area before and during the pandemic. So during the pandemic, it was online. And but you know what's interesting? What I find interesting about my art is it appeals to all age groups, but adults typically, when they look at my art, they go, "Wow, this is really cool. This would be great for kids." They immediately project it back to kids. But I have found that adults, it appeals to adults as well, you know?
That's great. That's great.
That's
Mhm.
awesome. So,
Yeah.
Who you are a teacher and you have mentioned that word at the beginning when you were thinking like who are you? Where did your journey begin and where you're at right
Right.
now? You mentioned the word teacher a lot. Is there a teacher that you remember dearly that inspired you to or contributed to the to who you are now? A teacher as a child, or if you didn't, this is why you are like this because you are being what you didn't have.
You mean as a teacher? Like what shapes me as a teacher?
No, like what was a good memory of a good teacher you had?
Ah, okay. I think one of my favorite high school teachers was my French teacher. Um, he was very cerebral and he had a dry sense of humor. He had a really dry sense of humor, and he wasn't the most dramatic person. He was very low key, but he was a favorite among, it was a girls' school. He was a favorite among my classmates because he was just so funny. And I think teachers who have a great sense of humor, I really love. And also, I remember fondly my Chinese teacher from my university days. She was so kind. You know, all the students who all of the students who were not native Chinese who didn't know a thing about Chinese, were just thrown in at the deep end when we started Chinese. She made it so easy for us to pass. I think we got grades that we didn't deserve, to be honest, at the start. She was just so kind because she wanted us to learn. And I remember she gave me some of the best advice when I won a scholarship to study in Taiwan. And she said, when you go to Taiwan, and this is a principle that I think doesn't just apply to me, I think it applies in general as a teacher or even as a student, when you have particular goals in mind. She said, make sure when you go to the university that you go to, because I was going to be doing a Chinese program. And she said, when you get there, they're going to give you a test to place you in a class. She said, whatever you do, make sure that they put you in a class that's slightly above the level that you're at. She said, you just have 1 year to be there. Just about within a year, you have to learn what you're going there to learn. She said, make sure they put you in a slightly higher level to stretch yourself so that you can learn more and learn faster. And it worked. It really did work. I did exactly what she told me to do, and the results. I saw that the proof was in the pudding, and the pudding was tasty. It all worked out well. Yeah.
So that's funny. So you had some amazing teachers, it sounds like. But
Mm-hmm.
I have a question that's kind of off here. How
Sure.
many languages do you know?
Uh, Let me see. Well, standard English, and then English Creole, which in some ways is considered a separate language. So two forms of English, Spanish and French, which I learned in high school, but which I speak, reasonably well. I can hold a conversation. Mandarin, which I studied in Canada and Taiwan, and intermediate German, because I started teaching myself out of high school, and then I did some German courses at university, and bits and pieces of Japanese,
So Tammy,
Korean,
are you
and
counting?
Portuguese.
Yes, we're
I
up
think
to
it's like
like
eight. Is that eight?
eight.
That's eight.
That's
Yeah.
funny. Wow, wonderful.
It's so funny
Congratulations.
because people that don't live in our country in the US always speak more than two languages or one language, like Lori. Me, I know a tiny bit of Spanish, but that's it. It's like, yeah,
Okay.
I took some, but if you don't use it all the time, I find my memory like loses it.
Okay.
So I speak art,
Ah,
kindness. Okay, those are my language. I will try. What's funny is I don't know if it was last week. It was with one of our guests. They lived in Eugene, and when I was younger, we did property management, and we had students from all over the world. Well, some of those kids would come in, and they didn't speak any English. And so you would have to find ways to communicate and so they could understand, and sometimes they'd bring an interpreter for that to sign their contracts in that first day. But other than that, you're just like trying to it's almost like you create your own sign language or something. It was funny,
right.
but after a while we understood each other. So
Right. Yeah. And I would say learning a language, I think, is like riding a bicycle. You may stop for a while, but you really never forget. It's like swimming. You may stop for a while, but you never forget. If you dive back in, you might find that you're doing the backstroke, you're doing the breaststroke. You're all you
hey, I
totally
know my numbers in college. How to say how are you, the basics.
That's a start. That's still a start.
Yeah, but isn't it great? I mean, Tammy, it's never too late. Duolingo is a great tool, but
Okay, I'm still
sometimes
working on my book. I'm.
no more projects. But Nika, do you find words that are better for one thing? Like my husband and I are like, oh, too bad English because we both speak English and Spanish. Too bad there's not a word in English that describes this. Or too bad there's
Right.
not a Spanish word that describes this as well, this feeling or sensation or thing happening in your emotional thing
Right.
happening in your heart at the moment, as English has a better word sometimes or vice versa. Spanish has a better
Right.
word for some things.
Right. Yes, definitely. especially like with a language like English Creole. The language is very graphic. It's very, very graphic. We speak in pictures. So standard English is not as graphic. I don't even think Shakespeare is as graphic. English Creole is very graphic. So sometimes I think that there are things that it's more effective to say in English Creole than it is to say in standard English. For example, um, if I want to say that somebody's cooking is tasty, delicious, we won't say that in Trinidad. You will almost never hear a Trinidadian say, "Wow, you can really cook. This food is so delicious." They will say, I'll say it how we exactly how we would say it, right? And I'll translate it. You look at a real cook and go, "Turn down my pot. You have a real sweet hand." So what I just said was, "Girl, you can really cook. I'm going to turn over my pot," meaning I'm turning over my pot because I'm not gonna cook. I'm gonna eat from your pot because your pot is so good. You have a real sweet hand. You have a sweet hand because you're the hand stirring the pot is producing sweet food. So that's a sweet hand. So there are things that I would faster say in standard English because the impact is just more entertaining.
It's very descriptive, right? Like very
Mm-hmm.
descriptive, very visual. Or
Yes.
yeah, well,
Thanks
that's
for
fascinating.
translating that and for showing. I was going to ask if you would. So it gives us an idea. And yeah, I would say it's definitely a different type of English, a different
Yes.
language.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
Well, it's
used
And
kind
to
of like if you
visit
go
St.
to
Croix or the Virgin
England or different
Islands.
places,
Yeah.
people use different words too, to where you're
Hmm.
like, okay,
exactly.
what are they actually saying or talking about?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But I have to say that maybe going back to my books a bit, and what your page is all about, self-care and art and nature. I have to say that everything that I do feeds into me taking care of myself and also helping to take care of other people as well. Because when I write, I can express myself in a way that allows me to sometimes uh, remove my emotions layer by layer to get to that little P at the bottom of all the mattresses, like the princess. Do you know the
The
story of the
Princess
princess
of
and the
Peace.
P?
Hmm.
There's a little P. I always say those mattresses are like all those things on top of the real problem. And when you can remove each layer, you get to the real problem. And for me, writing is like that. Like I can find, because sometimes part of being able to identify the mattresses is having the language to do it. And then also and then when you find that P, and let's say that P is something painful, being able to find the language to express your pain, or even sometimes your joy, it doesn't always have to be pain, but that little P usually is painful. And so being a writer has really equipped me with the language to communicate with myself and to communicate with others, and to really be very clear with myself about who I am and what I'm about. And also I find that because I've been writing poetry since 2001, and I write prolifically. I mean, I've lost count of how many poems I write, and I have found that writing has spilled over into speaking. So I would say I'm a seasoned writer, but that has now spilled over into how I speak as well. And all of that, I think, lends itself to self care.
I love that you bring that up. I love that you bring that up. I even see many messages going around the social media platforms like, if you have this, go walk. If you have that, da da da. And the one for anxiety, which is a buzzword of nowadays, if you're anxious, write or journal or have a gratitude journal.
Right.
And you have basically beautifully explained it there. And Tammy said we each have a book, and I know everybody watching, many of my clients, I say, you can write a story about your trials and adversity. She said, oh, everybody tells me that, but I never seem to get sit down to do it. Doesn't matter if it's gonna be a best-selling book, a
Right.
journal, some kind of work that really puts it in between binders, right? What is it that you went through that you were able to overcome? And like you say, I think Nika, if you agree with me, it's basically very healing, is what I
Yes.
kind of heard you say. Like it's self-help because you're healing yourself as you're putting all these suppressed thoughts or ideas in paper or in art, as you're doing, expressing it um,
Right.
with your art is just so healing because you're organizing your thoughts. You are
Right.
coming up with some methodology or something that has helped you, that's going to help others. And that's what we're about. We're about getting outside of ourselves so we can show up for those people that are going to be ready with our message. And that's
Exactly.
our message all the time here in every chance we have. What is your limiting belief? What's stopping you from living your life to the fullest so that you can bless others?
Exactly. Exactly. And the beautiful thing about communication is that it taps into that truth that life and death are in the power of the tongue. Words have energy. For example, one of the things I love about Chinese, apart from its artistic element, is its philosophical dimension. The fact that it is both artistic and philosophical. So, for example, the word for word in Chinese, one of the word for word, especially the traditional form. There are different forms of Chinese, but there's a simplified form, there's a traditional form. In the traditional form, depending on how you analyze it, you could say that the Chinese depiction for the word is bands of energy, like bands of energy coming out of somebody's mouth. And that's
Wow.
what language is. It's energy. For example, you have these experiments where people may bully a plant, even a plant. And within quick time, the plant starts withering, you know? And by the same token, you water a plant with love, with kindness. You speak to your plant like you would to a pet or a child, a loved one. That plant will just flourish. And that's the power of words. So when we use, whether when we journal, when we speak to ourselves, when we manage our inner conversations and we direct them in the right direction, that's what we're doing for ourselves. It's using language to water our souls and bring forth beauty and life, an orchard, a garden, just something beautiful and life giving.
Words are very important. So it's like always use your words. Make sure you use the right words. And if you're not sure that you're going to say something that you shouldn't, probably should walk away or be silent for a little bit,
Right.
because words can hurt
Yeah,
or they can bring joy.
exactly.
It goes both ways. So I have a quick question for you. Where do you
Sure.
draw your inspiration for all of this? How did you get in, were you inspired by the church when they was like saying you need to do this, or did they do it in inspiring? Do you go out and go on walks in nature? How do you get inspired to do the work that you do?
I think it's different things, many different things. Well, first of all, everything interests me. I'm curious about everything. And sometimes it could just be that I've overheard a conversation. It could just be a line in a conversation. And I think, wow, that's interesting. I'm going to put that into a poem. I'm going to find a way to work that into a poem. Or it could be, well, there's certain things that interest me. Trinidad is Trinidad is a place, we're a little bitty place, but we're so rich in so many things. Music, dance. We are ethnically diverse. We call ourselves a rainbow because we have this little island with people from probably every continent here, except maybe Australasia, but every other continent. And um, we have the food, we have food from different food with different cultural influences, we have music, we're like a big jukebox, we're like a big music box, we have dance, we have folklore, storytelling. So there's a lot for me to look at. But then I've also traveled, I've been to the Far East. I lived in Taiwan, South Korea, Japan. And also, I'm very observant. I look, I listen, not in a what a Trini would call a macocious way. Maco means to mind somebody else's business in a nosy way. I don't do it in a macocious way, but very observant. I love looking at people, trying to understand how people think. I love animals. So all of those things get poured into my work, my interests and my observations, and also sometimes direct inspiration from God. Sometimes inspiration from God could be a little nudge like, why not use this word, or why not use this color? Or it could even be like taking dictation. I mean, sometimes some one or two of my books, I say I can't take credit for these books. I feel like I was just taking dictation.
Yeah. So,
from up high, from
yeah,
God.
I totally get it. It's like when it's like on some of
Oh,
my
sorry,
art
my sound
pieces,
just
I always know it's
sound back
right
here.
because God will give me that visual in my head
Right,
and it just stays there. And it's like, oh, this is what I'm doing. Everything else is gone. But it's like,
right.
and a lot of times I don't proceed on something because I'm not visualizing it all yet. And I
Mm.
know that sounds strange, but I have to visualize stuff because then it's like I know it's going to get done because then it's like, okay, I'm going to pursue it. Because then it's like, I feel like God gives me the ways. Because, like, when I was doing a 22-foot carving piece,
Mm-hmm.
you
Wow.
know, a
Wow.
wall, which is
Mm-hmm.
huge, I pray, I would pray the whole way I was driving. Okay, God, show me. But I had known what the end product was gonna be, but it's many, many layers when you're working on a piece. And so I'd like, okay, show me what I'm working on today. But I had
Right.
to have that concept in the first place. Or when I did children's rooms, when I painted huge murals, like, you know, but they were all like 20-foot ceilings. So
Wow.
I'm painted a 14-foot cupcake in one because we were doing like Honey, I
Wow.
Shrunk the Kids, in one of the rooms. And so we had mushrooms and, all these little fun things that you would find in the grasses and stuff. But when you're working on those kind of things, you have to a lot of times visualize. And
Right.
sometimes, I guess that's what I was asking. I mean, you answered it beautifully because yes, sometimes we're inspired because of vacations, but sometimes we're inspired because going out on walks. I get inspired just going out or I hear somebody's things. Sometimes people go like, what's the story behind this? And all I can say is, well, actually, it was God that gave me that
Mhm.
because I wouldn't have done that otherwise.
Right, right. And by the way, I would also say some things are just cold turkey. Like I know I want to do a particular project, just like I would have sat down and planned an essay in high school. You sit down and you say, okay, this is what this collection's gonna be about. This is what I need to cover in so many poems, and it's just cold turkey.
Wow, that's amazing. That means you're so in tune, you're sure of your call and your calling, and you are executing, you're doing it. We really appreciate you taking your time to be here and sharing your greatness. You're definitely not an imposter. You are a stellar,
Thank
superstar.
you. Shooting
And thank
star on the way.
yes, yeah,
I know.
shooting.
Actually, I'm ready to go visit her. What do you think, Lori? After she was
Yeah.
describing that island, I was like, oh, that sounds so much fun.
So you are in Trinidad and Tobago right now?
I am, yes.
Oh,
I'm in
fun,
Trinidad.
fun. That is
Yes.
great. That is great. I think we've had several other guests. One that recently, when we were interviewing her, she had recently moved there and things like that. Maybe you need
Oh,
to meet, maybe you need to scroll and
yeah,
find the interview with her.
absolutely.
But it is just so wonderful to have you. And I hope, and I know that, and I trust that our viewers, our audience is going to benefit so much from your tenacity, your inspiration, your motivation of getting yourself out there and share your talent, share
Thank
your
you.
message and your knowledge. If there's any other closing remarks that you want to share for our audience, summing up your awesomeness, that would be great.
Let me see. I would say, all of us were designed to be royalty, designed to be great.
Mm.
There's a gentleman that I follow online. His name is Myron Golden. He's a American entrepreneur, African American entrepreneur. And I remember him saying that, the Bible is not a religious book. It's a book that's designed to teach people how to be royalty. It's a book written by a king about his kingdom and how his kingdom works and how he wants us as kings and queens, I guess princes, and so on, princesses and princes to rule and reign with him and also over whatever assignment he has given us within our domain right here on planet Earth. So I just would love everybody to know that whatever you're called to do, you're called to greatness. You know, you're called to that. And once you embrace it and really find your sweet spot in life, you know, the world will be your oyster.
Wow. Thank you so much. That's great closing remarks.
You're
Tammy,
welcome.
anything else you want to add?
So I just want to say, stay safe if out there, if you guys are in cold weather like I am. Enjoy the sun if you're in weather like Nneka or Lori. So go out there and go on a walk, right?
Yes, enjoy
And
nature.
like Nneka said, we all are given gifts. And sometimes if you don't know what it is, actually, if you read my book, I'll give you some ideas of how to find that out. And I think Lori's does too. But think about the things that people tell you that you enjoy and
Right.
pursue those, as long as they're
Mm-hmm.
not hurting anybody else, pursue them,
Mm-hmm.
enjoy them, have fun. But like I said, you can always follow us on unlockingfreedominnature.com. Leave questions if you have those here for everybody. And we just want to thank you so much for being here, and we appreciate your support. And we're almost at 500. So please be sure to invite
I'm
other
working
guests
on
to
it.
join
I'm
us.
working on it. So Nneka, if you can please add your links in here under the interview, in the comments, etc.
Sure, no problem.
It will be so lovely for people to have access to your masterpieces. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you for
everyone. Have a
having me.
great
This was
week.
fun. Okay, bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.